There's a new world patch and it has some important changes specifically for casuals, so let me show you. We're getting familiar with this. They now seemingly do a weekly patch on Tuesdays. It generally goes live on that night if you're in the Pacific time, which is basically first thing in Europe and probably some other places as well. And this is patch 1.6.3. And the first one right at the top of the list is one I've seen a lot of people complain about, and that is fixed an issue that caused weapon projectiles to disappear when either attacking a target that was in close proximity or hitting certain types of ground. So this was making grav wells and stuff like that disappear. Hopefully that is a permanent fix that stops that problem rather than just being a short-term fix. Why that kind of stuff happens, obviously we'll probably never know, but they finally got around to fixing it, because that's just the kind of issue that just makes the game feel bad, even if in a lot of ways it's not game breaking. Because if you're in a war and that happens to you, well, it can maybe be the reason you win or lose a war, which can be pretty important. And then there's a couple of items that basically weren't allowing you to replace the gems. They should now be gem swappable, permissible, or whatever you want to call it. You should now be able to swap the gems in those kind of things. The same kind of thing as the last one, except probably on a lower importance level. They just needed to get that fixed, so it's done now. I'm not 100% sure what this next one is. Fixed an issue that caused a deep earring to use the incorrect perk. Not sure what the incorrect perk was. Not that it's too important, because the new versions of this item should now have the refreshing toast perk as intended. Perfect. The next bit looks a little bit messed up in terms of formatting, because it now just says housing and there is actually no patch note there. That might be on the forum or something like that. I'm not going to check it out. Probably not that important. I'll check it out. Okay, I just checked on the forum. I can't quite see what that one is, so presumably this is just going to get fixed at some point and will be assured. I don't think it's related to the next one, as that has nothing to do with housing, but is very important. So a little bit of background on this one. In the big patch 1.6, you know, the one, the bi-monthly patch if you want to call it that, apparently gypsum casts were supposed to have the expertise bumps increased. So maybe from like 2 to 5, maybe it was going 5 to 10. I'm not 100% sure of the numerical values. I haven't checked that in depth. But when that patch went live, it never actually happened. Now they have fixed an issue that caused the gypsum cast to ignore the newer expertise bump values. These items now grant higher expertise rating bumps per use. That's great for casuals or returning players. People who've come back to the game, maybe they weren't quite level 60. Now that you get level 60, it's a lot easier to get your expertise up and to that magical 600 mark. That way you can properly participate in that end game content, if you will, because you can be gear score 600 to 625 and everything is on the table. Before that, you're pretty much out of the game essentially, because nobody really wants you, unfortunately, unless you find a group of friends and you're all doing like lower gear score dungeons and stuff like that. All perfectly reasonable. But I'm very intrigued to find out what the actual expertise bump values are. If you do know, let me know in the comments, but I'll probably do a little bit of a check on my alternate character when I get on to 60, but I'm only like level 40 odd at the minute, so that might be a while. But very important, I think, that one. The next one is generally relating to the musical instruments. Fixed an issue that caused players to get stuck if they teleported or if the server crashed during a musical performance. Never personally seen that one before, but fair enough, it sounds like it shouldn't be in the game. But then we get to the real spicy stuff, right? Reduce the XP curve for the musical instrument trade skill, lowering the total time it takes to level up. They're doing this one a little bit quicker what they've done with the previous professions. It was quite frankly obvious that the grind on the musical trade profession was way too much. I would be very intrigued to see the numbers behind this one to see just how easier they've made it. Yeah, I feel bad for anybody who was leveling it up, but you have had the double like XP, I guess. But yeah, it was a little bit crazy the way that they implemented that. Hopefully it's less bad. You know what's going to happen in a couple of patches time, they're going to make it easier again. So just decide if it's that important to you, I would guess. But another thing that I think is good for casuals, because it is a casual trade skill after all. A nice little change here that I necessarily didn't think too much about, but tipping performers now uses a secondary interaction key, which is by default T, rather than the primary interaction hotkey, which would be E. Basically just standardizing the key used for performances. Fine, perfect, great. The next little section relates to the summer medley fur. Fixed an issue that caused sound effects to not play when dispersing the modeling bug swarms. I literally play with the sound off unless I'm doing the music, but even then I still haven't heard that, but you know, it is what it is. Good. Fixed an issue that caused town projects to not register as complete after a world restart, which prevented several town bestowments from upgrading to the next tier. Yeah, I've seen this one complained about on the forum and stuff like that, so yeah, it's fixed. Let's get over it. The summer fur is probably going to be here for at least 2 more weeks and probably longer than that. I wouldn't be surprised if it's another like 4 to 6 weeks. Fixed an issue that caused the medley fur windsock furniture item reward to display without said windsock. Classic, absolute classic new world there. Beautiful. This next one is vague but maybe actually important. Additional server and client performance optimizations. Good. That seems nice as long as it doesn't break anything, but yeah, that's a really good addition to see in here. Weirdly not seen them mention that before that much, so it's nice that it's here. And then onto the expeditions, we have the barnacles and black powder. finder fixed an issue that caused an invincibility bug with the Nereid's Rend debuff. Now that it has been fixed, the debuff has been re-enabled. So basically, one of the bosses in the dungeon had this Rend ability, which then would cause you to go invincible. I'm not sure if everybody became invincible, if you had to do something to trigger it. So what they did was they made the Rend disabled. That made the fight a lot easier, sure, but it also meant that people weren't getting invincible. So that was good, I guess, and they fixed it relatively quickly. So yeah, okay. And if I'm honest, I still haven't actually done the dungeon yet. I'm waiting for the group finder. Keep calling it dungeon. It's an expedition. Get over it. But apparently light armor was not dropping at the correct gear score. Something they fixed. Perfect. Although I'm sick of you light users anyway, so I don't care. I'm glad you suffered. No, I'm kidding. It's all right. But yeah, like it seems like a small patch, but it has some really important stuff in it. Weapon projectiles not disappearing. That's a good one. A little bit sad that it took so long, but fair enough. We'll take it. A little bit of a buggy note there with the housing. Still not sure what that refers to, of course. The expertise being increased with the gypsum cast. Perfect. Good. Glad that happened. Sort of feel like we need a bigger talk there, and you know I've moaned about it quite a few times, but it's a start. It's going in the right direction. Let's take it for what it is. And then the music skill being a bit easier to do, I think ultimately is good, because I think somebody said it's like over 12,000 songs or something like that, and that would just seemed absolutely insane to me. The game's supposed to be fun, not like a super grindy game. Let people achieve the stuff within a reasonable time frame. There's a difference between hardcore grind and a little bit of grind, and it was definitely in the hardcore section. Overall, good changes. I think we're all sort of waiting now. We know that the next patch is going to be big, and when I say the next patch, I'm talking about the big content patch. We know it's going to be a new zone, probably the Great Sword. I believe there's going to be so many changes with that. There's going to be a marketing push with that. It's going to be pretty massive. I just don't know what's in it beyond those two things. But I suspect we're going to get system reworks and all kinds of little things as well that are going to be pretty important for New World. Let me know your thoughts on this patch though. If you want to support the channel, do consider becoming a YouTube member. Have a most beautiful day. Like and subscribe. Goodbye.